You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Return guest. I just looked back. The last podcast we did was episode 206, which was August of 2020, when I would say the world was still, well, it was still chaos at that point. It just started to be chaos. We thought it'd be over by this point, but it's not. But my guest today, Jake Keys, Skydance Brewing. We talked about the dream that was you opening up. I think you had a location at this point, and it was in building. And we spoke about, when that was coming in and the excitement of having, the first Native American brewery in downtown Oklahoma City, and just all of these cool things going on. Not just for the brewery, but for yourself as well. You and Bobby were going to get married there, and it was awesome. We did it at the Brewers Union, which, has helped a lot of breweries launch, right? It serves a great purpose there. But we are a year and a half later. You have an awesome space, which is, we're recording right across the street in the branch. Thank you to the branch for hosting us to do a podcast. But I mean, mate, how's it been since it's been a year and a half? I haven't seen you since. What's it like
crazy.
Running a business?
Earlier when you said it's been a year and a half, first off, my first thought was that I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like yesterday. But then so much stuff has happened in between then that it seems like forever ago in that aspect. What's going to be embarrassing is if somebody goes back and listens to that episode, I think maybe I said something about, I think we'll be open by a certain time or whatever. And it obviously didn't even come close to that. I think we probably missed it by 8 months or more, So, things, you learn things from your first time of doing something.
Yeah.
So,
You weren't the only ones who struggled with construction being pushed back and the increased cost of construction and all the other stuff that was going on last year. And it was, 2020 and last year and all. it's built. People who built buildings last year and in 2020, they can build they've done it now. And you know what I mean? It's nothing for you to go and do another one, right? Because you've been through probably the worst kind of way of doing it with, workforces, COVID, all that nonsense going on, and, costs and, contractors saying, well, this month it costs this much, but next month it could be this. I don't know yet. How do you,
I think what I always felt like during that time was the people who actually put the fear to the side and actually did something during that time to where they would be open at this point. There's a lot of benefit to that. Whereas a lot of people, I think, kind of went into hiding business wise for a while, and then maybe right now they're trying to get something started. Well, it's like now's the time, I think, to get open.
Definitely.
Especially like this past summer, obviously before the past month or two, where this new variant has kind of scared people a little bit more. But man, I know we were rushing to get open before we opened in October, but we were trying to get open before that because that summer, businesses, restaurants, everybody was having record numbers, not just record since the pandemic, record all time, because people were so ready to get out. And so I would have liked to have actually even been done even sooner and caught some of that. Unfortunately, we didn't get open until October, which is the beginning of when things start to slow down going into the fall and winter. And then obviously right now it's January. We're in the midst of the slowest month.
January is the worst month to own an alcohol business.
Yeah. Even when I ran casinos, it was the slowest, so.
God, everyone on their New Year's resolutions. Gosh. All those people. It'll only last 30 days. Don't worry.
So what exactly are you doing with it's not dry January?
No. So I do this every year. The thing is, it's called 75 hard, and I've done it. Yeah. I've done it 3 or 4 times. Yep. But the thing is, it's 75 days is just a portion of it, which I've got through the 75 days, but there's an entire year's program to do. And in the last 2 years, I've started it in January and done it. And it gets me through, middle of March time. But I only do it when I've got something to train for. So I have a race in March that I'm kind of training for. So it just kind of like, so I can really focus on that rather than just like not, because it's easy to, I think it's fairly easy now to just like, eat healthy 1 or 2 meals a day, and then for dinner, or you might have a cookie, you might have ice cream or whatever it is, like, but for 75 days there's no cheat meals. So the alcohol part actually I don't struggle with, because I've never really been a big drinker, but it's I snack so much. I love snacking. I love Sour Patch Kids and cookies, and just like I have a cup of coffee in the morning and I want to dunk 2 cookies in it. Like so that's the tough part for me, but it gets me back into routine, which is most important. And
I'm pretty familiar with that. My relationship with 75 Hard is that I downloaded the app, joined the Facebook group. And
you read the book? I got that far.
I didn't read the book.
The book's good.
But I that might have been a year and a half ago too that I was going to do that. Never did.
It's, I tell people this, like, there's people who have completed it that actually work full time and build businesses full time. Like, I work, but this is work for me, and I do real estate. So my schedule is not, I don't have to take kids to school in the morning. I don't have to, do all this other stuff. I run my own schedule, thankfully, and I'm in a position to do that. So I think mine is probably a lot easier than most. But I've done it, like I said, a couple of times now, and I feel great after it. The bad thing though is, like, I do it, I feel amazing, I'm in the best shape of my life, and then I relapse and get fat, and then I got to do it again, and then I relapse. So 4th time's a charm. Hopefully I can figure it out this year.
That's actually probably my next evolution in business, actually, is like, I'm a big believer that your physical body, your health, being fit plays a big role in your ability to be a good business person. And to succeed in business. And that's probably somewhere I wish I'd been further along on at this point in time. And now when I see business people that I know, CEOs, entrepreneurs who also stay in great shape, like, I give it up to them. Because I knew what this would sort of be like. I ran casinos. I've been in those type of positions before, but when you own your own business and you kind of have to do every aspect of that business, it's even harder. And I find myself with that stupid excuse. It's not an excuse, which is I don't have time. And lately, though, the past couple of weeks, I've started pinpointing little moments in the morning where I'm like, wait a minute, you said you don't have time, and you're sitting here watching a YouTube video about brewing beer when you could be watching that on an elliptical or whatever, you're listening to a podcast while you're working out, which is what I used to do. Before we opened over the summer, I think I went 4 months and didn't miss a single day in the gym. My goal was Monday through Friday be in the gym, and I went like 4 months without missing a day, and I felt great. And since we opened, I haven't been one day since we opened.
I need to put an elliptical in your office or something.
Something like that. I don't have an office.
Oh, there we go. There we go then.
My office is the brewery. We didn't put any office space in. Another big mistake, I think. But
breweries and gyms don't really go together, do they? Someone's going to walk into your brew for the first time. Why is there an elliptical in the corner?
Look at that guy back there on the elliptical. Then they're going to be motivated to go to the gym, and they're going to quit drinking beer. They quit coming into the brewery.
That'd be Skydance Gym, Skydance Fitness instead of Skydance Brewing. But I mean, back to, like I said, looking at CEOs and the reason we first met was when I was on your podcast, Brewed with Hustle. Which you did in many episodes, and it's one thing that we mutually love doing is sitting down with entrepreneurs, talking about their business, figuring out what makes them tick, talking about what books they're reading, and just we could sit down with each other for an hour, and our stories may be similar, and we might be entrepreneurs, but there might be a 5-minute conversation in there that you're like, oh, I don't do that. I'm gonna try and do that. And there's and that's what people I think don't understand is when people like us, we're always listening to others, right? Like, why do you always listen to entrepreneur podcasts? I'm like, because I'm gonna learn something. The
stories, listening to other people's stories, it's motivational a little bit. For me, like the podcast, like when I started my podcast, a lot of that was it was honestly like trying to figure out what all these other people are doing that I really admired that I wasn't doing. Like, what am I missing? Like, what's the key ingredient or whatever? And so I used to come into Eote when he was in a whole different location.
The warehouse, yeah.
And so he that's how he kind of became like a mentor to me, and he still is, and he's always helping me with little things like mainly the mental side of things or the spiritual side of things. And like one thing I remember was going in there and having these conversations with him, and how much it really helped me with getting Skydance together. And so it made me want to have more of those conversations, but also share them with people. And so that's why we started the podcast. But every time I have a conversation with some entrepreneur, I catch myself like, I think they're like, man, when's this guy going to let me go? Because I can't stop asking them questions and talking. I'm just addicted to trying to learn something from somebody else that might help. You know, so
one thing that I think both of us have learned over time and listening to these people is the people who are really successful, they don't stop learning.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're always reading books, or they're always listening to, audio books. Like there's always something continually learning, which is something I think when we grow up that we're not really, once we finish high school or we finish university, we're like, oh, that's it. I'm never going to pick up a book again.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have time. Well, you do. And do you want to, and it's that whole dynamic of, do you want a better life? And we could go down the rabbit hole and all that kind of stuff and motivation. But, it's something that as long as you don't get in a rut and you don't just there's plenty of people that we know is like they're all talk and all they do is listen to motivational stuff and they repost Gary V videos and all that stuff. And you're like, you're still doing the same thing you were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We just want to shake that person.
Yeah. So Tim Ferriss, I don't know if you know who Tim Ferriss is, but he's written a couple books that are both similar. And the most recent one that I've been looking at is called Tools of Titans, I think. And it's like, basically what he did is he took all these people he admired in business or sport, whatever, like just all of the spectrums. And he sent them all a bunch of questions and just asked them if they would respond. And they're little things like, what's the best book you've read lately? Or, a lot of different things. And it was basically him fishing for info from these people. And so as I've read through those things, there's a lot of like little things where I've kind of taken bullet points of like, okay, here's what the most successful people in the world all have in common. So they'll all have different things they all do differently, but there seem to be a few things that they all had in common. Fitness was one, which is why I brought that up earlier, that's something I want to get better at. But also reading, like a lot of them meditate, they get up in the morning, they read, they try to get up early, and they spend that early morning time doing things that are like just kind of good for their mental health, but also creativity. That's when you're the most creative, is in the morning. But definitely they all read and they all journal, which was another thing I didn't realize, but they all journal. So I've started journaling for like the past year. And so reading these books, like, oh my gosh, man, they've led me to beer name ideas. They've led me to like helping me feel more creative. Like I might not have gotten an exact beer idea from what I read, but it just helped. I could feel my creative juices moving a little bit. Yeah. And the next thing I know, I'm over on my computer, like building a recipe and, knocking stuff out. And so, definitely, man. And then the older you get, the quicker your brain will actually the brain cells start to die if you don't read, you don't learn, you don't stay creative, you don't keep it active. When you're young, your brain's just developing, but we're at the stage now where you use it or lose it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So to that point, what are you reading at the moment? Or listening to?
I've unfortunately found myself in a mode where I'm on like 3 different books. So one of them is the Tim Ferriss book.
Which the Tim Ferriss one, The Titans, is more of like when you open it up, he's a great book because you can come to it, you can go back to it, whatever. Yep. Like it's not like you have to read a chapter and the chapter's 30 pages long. It's just it's a fantastic book.
Yeah. So it's like, that's what I like about it is I can kind of skim through it and find the name of somebody that I already know who they are, and like that maybe they've been in the news lately or whatever. And so I can find that usually if they're a successful person, they're probably in the book. And so I can kind of skip around and read different. Each chapter basically is that person's answers to a handful of the questions that he sent over to them. Yeah. And so that one, I mean, I've actually started trying at some point to start reading a lot of like more technical stuff on brewing, you know. So there's a few of those books. And then I think I've kind of really gotten it, like I said, a bad habit of starting some books and not finishing them, you know. So a lot of just entrepreneurial stuff, you know. I'm also addicted to like self-help stuff, you know. So just trying to, it could be fitness or it could be, you know, trying to become better at meditating, you know. So
which is really hard for, like, I'm reading a book right now called Supernatural by Jordan Peterson, and like I'm reading he's given kind of homework in it, and you're supposed to do meditations as you go, but I'm reading the whole thing through, and then I bookmarked all the meditations, and it's some mad, like, you're reading and you think, if I read this out loud to somebody, they're going to put me in a mental hospital. Yeah. Because it's just some of the stuff you're like, no one's ever taught me this. It's science. It's like, and then sound waves and electronic waves. I mean, all electromagnetic fields and all of that stuff that's going on. And I'm just terrible at science, but I'm reading it and I'm like, I can't tell this to anyone unless they've read the book, because they're going to think I'm a lunatic. You know?
Yeah. That's with a lot of the stuff I read. So, I'm really the past year started studying Stoicism a lot. And so
Ryan Holiday.
Ryan Holiday, like the obstacle is the way, stuff like that. That's a
do you still have that coin?
Yeah, I do carry the coin.
I remember that. Yeah.
And you know, and it's like, wow, you brought that up. What's funny is I kind of got to where I forget that I carry it every day, and it fell out of my pocket the other day, and it fell down the drain in the brewery, and I had to fish it out, and I got it out. But so I have to be careful now, like when I carry it, like try not to carry it in the brewery. So I don't have it on me now because I just got through canning and I didn't want to lose it. So, but that's kind of stuff people don't understand. And so if you try to talk to somebody about it, like, people don't understand Stoicism. They think it's a religion. And it's not. It's more like an operating system for the way you behave and act, and so that's you and I probably read a lot of the same books, and I know exactly how you feel.
So the brewery then, to give people some context, so again, go back and I'll link the previous podcast that we did to give obviously the whole origin story and the reason that you started the podcast, but to give some context, the reason, obviously, you know, you keep going back to that beer that you had with your dad, right? And you're like, one day we're going to do this at my own brewery, right? And you have one now. Tell me about that opening day. What was that like?
Oh man, that whole period of time, for probably, especially for a week, but particularly that whole month leading up to it, and maybe that week of, like, after we opened, is some of the most hectic time of my life, you know. And so one of the things that made it tough was, like, we thought would have been open in March. We didn't open until October. And then every month after March, it was like, okay, next month. It just keeps getting put back. And so, like, back in the middle of the summer, I bought baseball tickets to a Braves game in Atlanta because me and my son are both big Braves fans, and they were making a run at getting into the playoffs. And so I picked the last home stand of the year, thinking, we'll surely be open way before that. Turns out that was the week we opened. And so while we're scrambling, putting furniture together, getting employees hired, brewing beer, getting things, dealing with the city and the Able Commission and all this stuff, I get up and leave for 2 days with my son and go to Atlanta. And I'm glad I did, because it was like he told me. So we went before the game even happened. So the day before, if you haven't been to Atlanta, like, the whole area around the stadium is like a city, like it's like another town. There's all these restaurants and stuff. And now he wants to live there. There's some obviously really expensive apartments like right on the stage. So he wants to live there now. And so the night before we went out to eat, and we're walking through that whole area, and he just turns and looks at me and he says, "This is the best time of my life, Dad. This is the best trip ever," And I was like, man, so it was worth it, to take him, because I knew that once we opened, that those moments, the time that I'd be able to spend with him was going to be a little more limited, which it has been, which is something I kind of regret. Yeah. But, and so, it was crazy. And dealing with the ABLE Commission and all that stuff, like we literally got our license the day that we had our soft opening. Yeah. And we were running around like crazy to get it. It was just a huge, it was literally one of those things. It was so hectic to where it was like, I'm on the phone. We got it. Okay. Let's go. Let people in, so it was just nuts, and then a lot of people ask me, what was it like? What was, did you have like a moment or whatever after you opened where it was just, and I feel bad that I just haven't had that. I haven't had that moment like, wow, I did it, or like everybody thought because of the story with my dad and stuff that there'd be like this time, and I even like in my head for a couple of years, I envisioned like what it was going to be like. And I envisioned myself maybe being super emotional and, in tears, having that first beer or whatever, but things get so busy and so hectic. Have time to think. That you don't have time to step back and see the big picture. You're just in it still. And I can remember the day before we opened, and we planned it all out with Valona. Like we're planning out all this stuff of like, here's what the day's going to be like, food trucks and music, and we're going to have this and have that. And then I remember looking at my team and being like, oh man. And then there's the next day. Yeah. And then the next day. And then what are we going to do the following weekend? We haven't planned any of that stuff out. And if you want food trucks, we should have planned that a month ago, And so that just led to just these layers of like constant chaos that we're still in today, trying to get things planned out. If you ask Valona, like trying to get us have things planned out in advance is not happening. It just doesn't. We're not to that point yet.
Shout out V Marketing, who's in the room, who works night and day. Let's just say that. It doesn't stop.
Which when we brought her on board, I was like, I thought we were going to be Valorganized here. Like, what's going
she's so mad she doesn't have a microphone right now. But you're right. Like it's when you open and it's hectic and you've got all this stuff going on and you don't have a moment to think. But like you said, the good thing, you have the Parlor across the street that people can grab food and literally walk less than 100 yards straight over, bring their food in. Like you guys are in such a great location. And this location is only going to improve. And that's the good thing about getting into a spot that's kind of like in the up and coming. You guys are in early and I think the apartment building right there with everything, like it's awesome.
The location's been what we'd hoped it was going to be. Obviously we're hoping to have a restaurant move in next door that'll kind of really round things out and give us that food option. I'm predicting by being able to have food right there that somebody could order and have brought over to them, I'm predicting 20 to 30% increase in beer sales just from that. So that would be a huge benefit for us.
You don't open a restaurant?
I've managed restaurants and it's tough. If I could go back in time, we would have. So like at the time when back when you and me first did an interview and we were dealing with trying to close out our loan on the place and all this stuff, like at that point in time, we were going to get a loan through the SBA, and we kind of had this idea of what we were approved for, and taking on the space next door and then doing the construction that would need to be done to add a kitchen or all that stuff over there was more than what we were approved for in our loan, right? And so we just signed the lease on the one building. Well, then the pandemic hits, all this stuff, everything kind of gets shuffled around, and we ended up not getting an SBA loan. We ended up getting a loan through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which because we're native owned, we were able to do. And So when that happened, the BIA loan is 90% guaranteed, and at the time the SBA loan I think was 50% guaranteed.
That's a lot of cash
for the bank. 90% guaranteed. They like that. They're like, oh, okay, how much money do you need? And so had I known we would have gotten the BIA loan, then we would have done it. We would have taken on a little more debt and built the kitchen. So yeah, that's what I wish we had done that. But you know, this isn't going to be our last location.
Of course.
There'll be other locations. So we'll have an opportunity to take everything we've learned from this and the shoulda, coulda, wouldas and put them to use later in another spot. So yeah. But the Parlor across the street, you know, people come in and they order food from the Parlor or other restaurants, and they just have it delivered in. People can do that, you know, or they'll just go get it and bring it over. So
the best part about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one thing. I'm not like, when you grow up back home or just in general, people grow up and they go to football games and they drink Miller Lite, Coors Light, whatever it is, right? If you grow up in Oklahoma City, you know, the last 5 years, let's say, craft brewing has really become part of the Oklahoma City's DNA.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people who have no idea what that is, right? And you know, I kind of refer to it as like the first time you walk into a gym and you're out, you know, you think I'm out of shape, everyone's looking at me, like, what am I doing with these machines? That's kind of the feeling I'm sure that I had when I first walked into a brewery. I'm looking at the chalkboard, I'm like, there's 30 beers up there, I have no idea what any of these are. Tell me about kind of like, you know, you and your team and how you kind of, I guess, attack that stigma of, you know, because the last thing you want to do is be like the wine community that everyone says that, oh, if you're into wine, you're a snob, right? Which it's not. It's the total opposite with people who are in the beer community. And let's be honest, there's very few people in the wine community that are like that anyway. That's just what they were tarnished with. So what has it been like, you know, opening up and telling your team, hey, whoever comes in here, even if they don't act like they don't know anything, right?
It's interesting you bring up wine, because what led me to the way we handle that is wine. So when I started running casinos, you know, that was my first like time in my life to do something that made me feel like I could be a CEO, you know. And I started being around different types of people that did more things, that did bigger things. I grew up in a way of like, you know, go get a job at the gas station, you know, and retire there maybe, you know, that's the way I grew up. And so it's like, then I started running casinos, and we started going to these conferences all the time. We'd go to Vegas 3 or 4 times a year, and different places, Atlantic City, and these vendors that we buy slot machines from and stuff would take us out to dinner, and you know, and you know, wine and dine us. And so I can remember going with all these CEOs and tribal leaders and all this stuff, and we're going to these places that like some really expensive steakhouse or whatever, and getting wine, and they'd want us to, you know, the whoever's taking us out would be like, well, what kind of wine do you guys like? And I drank wine, but I was never like an expert on wine.
Right. You know? I'll take a $10 bottle off the shelf. It doesn't matter to me. Like it's
and so I'm sitting there trying to choose, and so I was really uncomfortable doing it, and my only thing I knew to do was maybe look at the price and kind of pick something in the middle. Right. You know? And or if I saw something that was named after like somebody famous or whatever, I knew that was probably crap. And so like I needed something that was named after some region or something, you know, something sounded fancy or whatever. And so that's all I knew to do. And it was just really uncomfortable. And then they would come over and they would open a bottle and they would pour just a tad bit in my glass and hand it to me. And I was like, well, what the hell? That's it? That's all I get? I didn't know they were wanting me to try it, you know, to see if it's okay. And then so I would just like guzzle it down and put it down. I thought they were just going to keep pouring a little bit at a time in there, you know, and they're like, oh, was it good? I was like, oh yeah, sure. Whatever. You know, it tastes like the bottle I bought at Walmart.
Tastes like wine to me.
And so when we started talking about how we're going to operate the tap room, I thought about that a lot, and I knew like that alone, that experience alone, had I been somewhere like that by myself, would have stopped me from ordering wine, and it would stop me from going in there if it wasn't like something that was planned by somebody else, and I definitely wouldn't take a date in there. You know, I wouldn't take Bobby in there and make myself look stupid by not knowing how to order wine. And so I didn't want people to have that experience in our tap room. And so we really work with our staff. One of the things we try to talk to them about is obviously the 10-second rule, as soon as somebody comes in, you need to be saying hi to them. But we always try to find out right off the bat, have you ever been in here before?
Yeah.
And even if they come in and seem like an expert or whatever, the first thing we do is if we have a chance, right? Sometimes it's super busy and you don't have as much one-on-one with people, but we try to go over the menu. Like, okay, well here, we're known for IPAs. Fancy Dance is our number one beer. It's a hazy IPA. We try to explain to them what it tastes like, and then we'll say something. It's all in the wording too. It's like, we'll say something like, well, Res Dog is our lightest beer. It's kind of our intro into craft beer, but I actually drink it all the time. So now it's like, maybe they want to get the intro into craft beer, but they don't want to say that they're a newbie. But now I've said I drink it, so maybe they'll get it too, And so just that kind of get to know the customer and communicate with them.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like people, if you let somebody walk in and they look at the menu and it's silence and nobody's talking to them, nobody's asking them questions or helping them, it gets very awkward very fast. And that's, I don't want anybody to have a single minute of a negative experience. Even if the day ends up great, that first little minute of a bad experience, I don't want that taste in their mouth ever when they come into our place. So,
well, when you kind of, we touched on this in the first podcast, is when you've ran casinos, right? It's all about experience. It's all about bringing people back and retaining customers and just providing that experience. Even if you're coming in, you're going to lose money, you're going to have a great time, and that's something that just sense that you transport into, the Skydance, is that regardless of who you are going to come here, we're going to have a great time. You are going to learn about the beers because, there's very few people who have tried all of them, and you come out with new ones and everything's different. And, I guess the average craft beer drinker is generally enthusiastic about beer, right?
Yeah.
And so they want to try stuff.
And they want something new and different all the time, which has led to some other decisions we've made recently about how we operate. But the other thing too is I feel like in the brewing industry, really probably any industry, humans is in general, we tend to say, well, this is how it's done. This is how it's always been done.
Right.
And we just do it. And so if you go to a brewery, really anywhere in the country, it's not just an Oklahoma thing. If you go to most breweries, you have to go up to the bar to order. Yeah. And that's different than if you went to a restaurant or really even a lot of other bars. And what we try to do is we actually, anytime it's possible, our staff goes out to the tables.
Right.
If you're sitting on the patio, our staff is trained when they can to go out there and get an order. I mean, I was sitting out on the patio one night. We have a bartender, Pat, he's really good at this, and the table kind of behind us, I could hear them talking about leaving. They looked at their watch and they were like, "Oh, you about ready?" or whatever. And then right at that time, Pat came out and said, "What's next, guys?" Yeah. And they said, "Well, we're gonna actually. Well, you know what?" And then next thing you know, they got them another beer.
Yeah.
And so afterwards, I went back and looked at their tab after they left, and they had 2 beers, and then that was the 3rd beer. And so he increased their tab by 50%.
Yeah.
And that made me think, if you did this on a regular basis and you could increase almost everybody's tab by 30 to 50%, then that takes you from a $40,000 a month to a $60,000 a month. And so that's something we put a lot of focus on. And then when we have a patio, it's a ways out there. And then when we have the upstairs mezzanine area, it's a bit of a chore for a customer to come walk all the way back over to the bar to get a drink. And so a lot of times if they're going to make that walk, they're either going to just tab out, or they're going to come up and get one more and then tab out, And so I think we want to make things easier on people. We want to have a better experience by them not having to do that as often. When we do that, it keeps people from having to get in line. And so that keeps the line down, and so that helps the experience better. And all these little things add up to be a lot. It really adds up to be a lot. And in the end, I think it's really worked out. Like what we projected would be our average for a month throughout the year. After all the highs and the lows, on average, what we thought that would be is turning out to be what we're probably going to surpass this month, which is should be our worst month, like January. So our low is going to be better than what we thought our average was going to be going in. I think those little things have a lot to do with it.
And we've got to touch on, obviously, you mentioned you're a Braves fan, but you're a huge OU fan. it's been a very strange season for OU. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But you got to host game day, right? Like have people over. You got a massive screen there.
Yep.
You got the mezzanine, you got people up or down, which you can rent up top for a private party, right?
Yep.
And like, what's it like sitting in there for the first OU game, thinking this is my building? Like people are here to watch OU, my team, with me.
Yeah,
and they're drinking my beer.
That's a whole nother thing too that goes back to the way it's always been done. Well, most breweries will tell you they don't want TVs.
Yeah.
Any strategist in the craft beer industry that tells you how a brewery should be, they've all you don't want TVs in there. You want people experiencing the beer. Well, you know what? We're in Oklahoma,
right?
And you know what? People in Oklahoma, the one thing they love more than the Bible is college football.
Yes.
And so we wanted to figure out a way to have I've seen breweries put up a TV and then on game day they're dead and they wonder why. It's like, well, it's because it's not a good experience for watching a game there. And so, how do we create a good game day experience without it feeling like Buffalo Wild Wings? You know, there's nothing against Buffalo Wild Wings, but I mean that's just not what we're trying to go for in the brewery. And so Bobby did a great job of that layout and the feel of it. I mean, we have 5 TVs, 6 when we put one out on the patio. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like, a sports bar. And so, that was something I was never going to bend on because I'm a huge OU fan. Before I had a brewery on a game day, I'd try to go somewhere to watch a game. And it was like, either you're going to go somewhere doesn't have a lot of craft beer, or you're going to watch it at home. Because if I go to a brewery, I'm not going to be able to watch a game, not very well. I might be on some little TV way off in the corner. And so that was something I was dead set on we were going to have. And so we opened the second weekend that we were open was OU Texas weekend, and the place was packed. Yeah. And we did a nice little promotion that Valona came up with to give away a VIP experience upstairs in the mezzanine, which is a really nice spot. There's a big screen TV up there. There's soft seating, a couch. It feels like a cigar lounge up there, So. I was sitting up there most of the night with the people that won that giveaway. And I'll never forget the girl that won, her dad was sitting next to me. Me and him ended up becoming real good buddies because we were a lot alike. I think we both came up with a bunch of new cuss words that game. and we were just going crazy. And then when OU makes the big comeback, I remember him slapping me in the chest. And he's like, man, your first OU Texas game in the brewery, you couldn't have asked for a better one.
So good.
And right then I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome, And so I remember my son was up there with me, and he yells over the ledge of the mezzanine down to the tap room. He's Boomer, and the whole place Sooner. And so I remember looking over that ledge at all these people. And I think it was Valona got a video of when we scored at the end to win. And there's people high-fiving and screaming and dancing. And there's some guy with a dog running in a circle. And the dog is the dog was going crazy. Oh, and I could just remember going, man, this is it, dude. This is what I always wanted. I always wanted to be able to have my own place, craft beer, my own brewery, and a whole bunch of my closest friends and family, which I call OU fans, that are there going crazy watching OU kick Texas's butt, And so that was maybe one of those moments that I said I haven't gotten to really take time to experience. There was a moment that day where I was like, wow, man, we did it.
So good. I mean, what a game as well, right? It was a bit of a mad one.
It was incredible.
So cool to be, back to what you said, you're either going to be, before you had the brewery, you're either sat at home on your own watching TV. Yeah. Or you're drinking something you don't want to drink in a sports bar, right? Yep. It's just not the same experience. So it's great that you've created that experience. Yeah. Lastly, I want to touch on, obviously, you're continuously evolving with drinks and beers. And the last time we recorded, we drank that strawberry. I think you just released it. And it was wow.
Was it the milkshake IPA or was it the strawberry blonde?
The strawberry blonde.
Yeah.
And I was just okay. Like this is dangerous because it doesn't taste like, it's not. It tastes like strawberries, right? It's not heavy or whatever. So it's kind of like I could drink 5 of these and then I pretend like I should probably, I need to try and get up and I can't. But what's what we got a beer in front of us. If people watching the video, they can see it.
So
tell me about it.
This is we talked a little while ago. Craft beer drinkers, they like something new, and so we talked earlier too about how we're both hooked on like reading and podcasts, right? And so I listen to a lot of podcasts about the craft beer industry. And for years, I've always felt like I was able to listen to enough of that content that I could kind of catch on to things that were happening on the coasts.
Yeah.
And that's how Oklahoma has always been. Things happen on the coast and then they come here, right? And so when I was a home brewer, I was making these hazy IPAs that all my friends in the homebrew club were like, hey man, there's something wrong with your beer. It's like real hazy. And I'm like, well, you'll like it in about a year, and sure enough now that's like all the craze. And so one of the things I started noticing while we were at the Brewers Union, and a big mistake is we didn't do this while we were at the Brewers Union, but I started noticing like breweries were doing a great job in the ones that were really successful in the tap room were having like new beer releases. It started out like new beer release every month. Yeah. They were like a new beer every month. And then shortly before we opened, it turned into every week. And one of the local people that you had on your podcast that does this a lot was Joel over at Stone Cloud.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, I think one of the things that really helped them keep going was the fact they were still coming out with a new beer every week. And so I knew that that's what we wanted to do. And it took us a couple months after we opened to kind of get caught up in production with our core lineup stuff. But now we're at this point now where we're releasing a new beer every week. We tried doing it for a couple months and missed a couple weeks, but now we're doing it. And last week we did Chroma, which was a triple IPA, and it was the best reaction to a release that we've ever had since going back to the Brewers Union days, anything. So I think we sold through 90% of it just on Friday. Like we released it on a Friday and 90% of it was gone by the end of the day. And then this is like in January when everybody's dead. Everybody else is dead.
Yeah.
And Friday, first off, the only Friday we ever had that was better than that one was the Friday right after we opened. So that was like our best Friday yet. Saturday was up there with one of our best Saturdays ever. And here it is January when we're supposed to be dead, And so that really instilled in my mind that this is the thing. We have to do this, like new beer every week, new beer every week. And then the other thing is like, I'm an IPA guy. That's what I love. I love hops. I love hoppy beers. I love West Coast IPAs, hazy IPAs. And so if I love them, I know it'll come through in the final product. It'll come through in the social media stuff that I send Valona. It'll come through in the way I talk about it on our vlog or in videos I make. People will sense the passion. When we're out selling beer, it'll come across. And some people might say, oh, you're just another brewery that makes a bunch of IPAs, but I'm just trying to be the brewery that makes what I love.
Right.
And if I love it, I know I can get other people to love it. And so that's what we're doing is a whole bunch of hoppy beers. Well, there's some stouts. We threw in some stouts. It's not all we do, but it's mostly of what we do. And then as big as Chroma was, our biggest series that we've done is this Juice Wolves. And it's a fruited IPA series. I'm actually going to have some of it now, but it's a fruited IPA series. Juice Wolves is a name. Bobby actually came up with this because there's people in the craft beer world that love craft beer and they're always chasing the juiciest IPA, chasing after these beers. And so they call them Juice Wolves. And so that's what we decided to do was call it Juice Wolves. And this is the third version of it. The first one was a pineapple milkshake IPA. Friends of mine said, don't make a milkshake IPA. They're all bad. Nobody ever likes them.
They're all bad.
And I didn't like them either, actually. As much as I loved IPAs, I didn't like the milkshake IPAs. And I felt like there was too much lactose, too much vanilla, and they don't use hardly any hops, really. There's not a lot of hop character in a milkshake IPA. And so I said, I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut back on lactose, cut back on the vanilla. It's still there.
It's still there.
It's definitely still
not overpowering.
Yeah, that's what a milkshake IPA is.
Yeah.
And then we dry hop it more than like anybody else would.
Okay.
And so the first one was pineapple. Second one was a strawberry milkshake IPA, and now the one we're releasing tomorrow is this one, and it's an orange creamsicle milkshake IPA. And this thing, my assistant brewer, actually, while we were packaging earlier, he said, "You know what this tastes like?" He said, "It tastes like orange Starburst." And I was like, "It sure does." That's
perfect.
exactly, and it kind of looks like an orange Starburst.
It does, yeah.
And so it's just super hazy, thick. That's why they call it a milkshake IPA. It's super. I don't know if you want to smell. I know you're not drinking, but you can. But
very, very orangey.
So
for sure.
it's definitely the strawberry one. It tasted like sherbet, strawberry sherbet ice cream to me is what it tasted like.
Yeah.
And then this one definitely, I think he hit the nail on the head with the Starburst thing.
Yeah.
That's what it tastes like. Grant, our sales guy, he thought it tastes like orange creamsicle, exactly like that. And so this one, I think my projection is it'll sell more than the one we did last week. So we kept twice as much in the tap room.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. But this has been a big series for us. It's been people come in all the time when the last one ran out. They're in there all the time. When's the next juice? They want hints like what's it going to be? What fruit is it going to be? Yeah. It's like a big topic of discussion all the time, awesome. Which is cool.
Yeah, because then it builds your brand. It builds, like I said, a series, and by keeping it a series, then the good thing about doing like weekly releases, it's great for your market research. Yeah. Right. And then you keep it back, or you might keep it on as a main item, or whatever it is. Like it serves to many purposes. Right.
Yeah, it keeps things fresh. Like literally, what we're in the midst of right now for us is we have all of these weekly releases planned out through most of April, and all but like one of them are IPAs. And so by the time people get through March, I want people to say, if you want IPA in Oklahoma City, you got to go to Skydance.
Yeah.
And I think we're on our way to that. I don't like to say that, we're the best at IPAs, because there's a lot of good breweries but I don't care what the other ones are doing. What I care about is what Skydance is doing. And I want people, if they're in Oklahoma City and they ask somebody, where can I go get a good IPA? I want the first word out of their mouth to be Skydance. Yeah. And that's what I want us to be known for. But so like we also do a double dry hop version of Fancy Dance. And basically we make Fancy Dance, and then we put more hops in it, and that more is usually like a different hop, something we haven't used before. So it's like, for me, it's like, what would Fancy Dance be like with this hop? And the very first one we ever did was maybe one of the most popular beers we ever made, and it was with a hop called Brew One. And I loved it so much that now recently we got where we couldn't find one of the hops that we use in Fancy Dance. And so I said, we'll replace it with Brew One. And so that whole process of creating that one-off beer taught me something that introduced me to a new hop, a new ingredient. And so now we use that in our best-selling beer, and that experimentation is what leads to me being able to turn our best beer into a better beer.
It's just constantly evolving, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's you're mixing flavors and ingredients and everything, and there's no limits to the stuff that you could come up with. And obviously you're going to fail on some. That's natural, right? Like we don't get to where we want to go without failing. That's the beauty of it. But there's plenty of there, and there's a taste for every person that comes in. It's just the good thing is that you've trained your staff to ask the right questions, to figure out exactly what that taste is. And then we've got something for you.
We've learned a lot since we opened, and we learned a lot while we were at the Brewers Union. We made a lot of mistakes at the Brewers Union. One of the biggest things was at the Brewers Union, we had a contract that said we had to brew 2 batches a month. And if you're going to brew 2 batches a month, you better come out with a lot of different beers. And so we ended up what we have now is 6 core beers, and that might change. Like we may cut that in half. We've been talking about that a lot lately. So over this summer, there's probably going to be some experimentation of seeing what sells and what doesn't, and cut it down to maybe 3. and then do more of just the one-off stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that we really learned too was packaging. In the future, our core lineup, who knows, there might be some changes to the packaging, but also like when we did that DDH series, the can looked the same every version. The only thing that was different was down at the bottom, the little word that was the new hop.
Ah, okay.
And so people would go into a liquor store and they'd see the third one and they'd be like, "Oh, I've had that before." And it's like, "No, you haven't. You had the first one." But they don't know the can looks the same. And so slowly it wasn't selling as much. Whereas in the tap room and the people that follow us, it was getting bigger and bigger for them because they're like, "Oh man, this is great." They look forward to it. But that's not what sells the big, volumes of beer. Yeah. And so now with the new one that we're about to do, it's totally, each one will look totally different, so those you learn little things, there's a lot of stuff that I wish we'd have done a little bit different, but you might as well just change it now and just do it.
Well, and the good thing is like by figuring it out early on, it's not, it's not an expensive, it might be an expensive mistake, but it's not as expensive as it could be if it was 2 years down the line or whatever it is, right? Like you're figuring it out as you're growing, building a brand and noticing that, hey, this is killing it in the tap room, but why isn't it selling well?
For us, like with the core beers, it's like you come out with 6 core lineup beers right off the bat, and you don't have an opportunity to build one at a time. And the real way to do it would have been you come out with one beer and you build it and let it, if you're going to play in this distribution game that we play in instead of being tap room only, but you've got to come out with them more slowly and let them get some feet under themselves before you come out with the next one. And what we've done now is we're kind of at this point where some of our beers cannibalize the other beers, and so we're slowly coming up with ways to make some adjustments there.
Well, mate, it's been a pleasure to catch up. Like I said, it's been since August of 2020. It's a lot has changed. A lot has changed in the world. But it's great to finally see the space, to be in there, to have a beer and see up top. And I love the glass in there. You can see everything. I can't imagine. I'm gonna have to watch that video of how it was on game day, because that's just awesome to see that.
That little upstairs, that's a great spot too, man, for like a party, or we do a lot of private events up there. So like people are contacting us nonstop about booking something up there, and we've made it, right now we're just trying to book it as much as we can. So we've made it super affordable for people. It's really easy to rent it out, and so that upstairs is really kind of the gem of the whole place. And I will say this, as a brewer, I love it when people come in and say their impression of the place is like, "Oh man, the beer's great." So what I'm about to say kind of hurts my feelings sometimes, but one of the biggest thing people say is how awesome the tap room is. Like I see people come in before they even order a beer. Like today I was in there canning and I looked through the window, I see some people come in, you can tell they were there for the first time, and I saw the girl just looking up and her mouth's open, and she's just like, wow, she's looking around. And so to hear people say, "Wow, what an amazing space," that's like, because that was kind of unexpected. Like we were aiming for it. I knew the beer would be good, but we were hoping the tap room was going to be cool, and it turned out to be pretty badass.
Knocked it out of the park. That's awesome. And Bobby did a great job too.
She did. That's all her, man. That, if it was me, it would look like my dorm room at OU back in the day.
Give me a shed. It's fine.
There'd be OU banners and football stuff everywhere. So she did a great job. And you got to give it up to DG Smalley, my boy that did the artwork. So there's a big old piece of artwork that he did. It's a fancy dancer, kind of like named after our number one beer. And that's the centerpiece of the tap room. And there's a lot more stuff we're working on right now with some native art. I've got a cousin that's going to have some rotating pieces in there, so it's cool. For people listening, where can they find you? What's your social medias, website, all that good stuff? Just at Skydance Brewing on all the social medias. Skydancebrewing.com is the website. But we have really good social media. So that's the place. If you want to find out about these weekly releases, like you've got to be following us on social media. Like when people, the week after get on there and they say, "Oh, I got to go try this beer," and they come in and it's gone. I mean, you got to follow us on social media. If you want to know, you want to get it before it's gone, you're going to have to follow us on social media. So that's definitely, and on social media is a good place to follow you because you're always wearing that Skydance shirt.
I got that t-shirt. Actually, it's a little tight on me at the moment, so I will be wearing it a lot more after my 75
days from now.
I just need to get another one. That's what it is. But mate, thanks for taking the time out. Proud of you for getting this thing going and keeping it going. And I know it was a dream, like we talked about, but
I appreciate that.
It's awesome to see it and keep going. And like I said, see people in the brewery or bringing food over or having whatever it is, like drinking beer. It's really cool to, that's one of the best things about this podcast is, 2020 August, we spoke about this dream of yours, and here we are now, like you've gone through pretty much, like the first kind of holiday season of it, and it's been open and you've had these experiences and it's only going to get better. So it's awesome to see. I appreciate you taking the time. I will try this new beer in 75 days and I'll come in and try some more. For people listening, I'll post the links to the social media, the website. And we will catch you next episode. Come to the brewery, take a drink. It's in, what's the address before we haven't said that
so
yet.
We're at 1 Northeast 7th Street.
All right.
So we're in
right
Automobile Alley.
Yeah,
Automobile Alley, just east of Broadway, right across the street from the Parlor. We're in between the Parlor and Prairie.
Perfect.
So that's what people kind of recognize.
Awesome. So. All right, guys, I'll put the links in the description and I will put the address and we will see you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.